President of the Human Rights Council, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, allow me to congratulate you on your election as President for the 55th session of the Human Rights Council for 2024. Further, Namibia extends its sincere appreciation to all member states and the entire international community for their expressions of sympathies and condolences to the Namibian nation on the sad passing of our beloved President, Dr. Hage G. Geingob, who was laid to rest 3 days ago. The late President Geingob's voice resonated strongly in advocating for democracy, human rights, and inclusivity, where growth and prosperity are shared among all peoples of the world. He worked tirelessly for an inclusive society and shared prosperity for all Namibians, guided by the principles of unity, peace, and justice. Mr. President, Namibia welcomes the theme of this session that focuses on the policy, legal, and institutional arrangements that affects the lived experiences of persons with disabilities. There is no doubt that we need to do more the world over. Consistent with the letter and spirit of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Namibia believes that the twin rights of equality and non-discrimination of people with disabilities are sacrosanct to ensure persons with disabilities lived a dignified life. As a testimony of our commitment to better the lives of persons with disabilities, Namibia pays a special maintenance grant for children with disabilities and a grant for adults with disabilities. This coincides with the mantra of our late president that no one should feel left out wherever you are, whoever you are. Mr. President, sadly, persons with disabilities across the world continue to face multifaceted challenges, thereby making them more vulnerable and susceptible to abuse. Namibia particularly wishes to place emphasis on the rights of persons with disabilities in situations of armed conflict and natural disasters. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, and I quote, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members," end of quote. What will the finding be today if we, as the international community, are measured on how we treat our most vulnerable children, women, and persons with disabilities in times of armed conflict, natural disaster, or even in everyday life? Mr. President, gender-based and sexual violence, including domestic violence and child sexual exploitation, remains a disturbing phenomenon in Namibia and the world over, despite progressive legislative, policy, and institutional arrangements in place. We recognize that socioeconomic and behavioral factors, including unemployment and poverty, are some root causes that creates this lopsided state of affairs. Accordingly, we call on all of us to strengthen collaboration among key stakeholders for a drastic shift in responding to these evils. Our late president often reminded us that, and I quote, "Inclusivity spells harmony, whereas exclusivity spells conflict," end of quote. We must therefore continue to create spaces for dialogue to ensure peace and stability in the world, including in the Southern African region. Namibia, like many developing countries, remains vulnerable to the asymmetrical impacts of climate change. We remain concerned about the impact of climate change and global warming on the enjoyment of all human rights. We therefore commit to addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Mr. President, we are deeply disturbed by the increasing escalation of violence in the occupied Palestinian territory, especially the besieged Gaza Strip, and we thank the Council for its advocacy to stop the violence. Namibia condemns the horrific atrocities being committed on the people of Palestine and calls for an immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Israel from Palestinian territory. and for Israel to be held accountable for the carnage in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. We urge the international community to join this call. We simply cannot stand by and watch idly. In the same vein, we reaffirm our unwavering support for the realization of the inalienable right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination, in line with the UN Charter and the AU Constitutive Act. We further call on all concerned parties to refrain from any further exploitation of Western Sahara's natural resources, as such exploitation undermines the future reconstruction and development of Western Sahara and its potential to become a viable state. We urge the Kingdom of Morocco to fully adhere to the principles and goals enshrined in the AU Constitutive Act, especially the need to respect colonial borders as they existed at the time of independence. Mr. President, as I conclude, the upcoming Summit for the Future, which Namibia will co-facilitate with Germany later this year, is an important moment in world history. Given where we find ourselves, strengthening multilateralism is our beacon of hope. We must take stock of how far we have come when we declared, and I quote, "Recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world," end of quote. Collectively, as states, we should create a future where every individual is valued, respected, and empowered to live a life of dignity, fulfillment, and the pursuit of happiness. This, for Namibia, includes the universal recognition of the right to self-determination and development for all peoples of the world. I wish you all success with this session of the Council. I thank you, Mr. President.